like Pastor Sawyer said, my name is Jera Ramos. I'm the OKC student coordinator. I also have the privilege of getting to help lead the 11th grade girls small group. Shout out to them. And we've been in this series called Devoted, which is going through the book of Ruth. So today we're going to talk about being devoted to boldness. So the title of my message is Devoted to Boldness. And we're going to be in Ruth chapter 3. But before we jump into that, I want to tell you guys a really embarrassing story. Is that okay? Yes. Okay, so when I was in high school, when I was a junior in high school, it's getting close. It might be getting close for some of you. Prom season is coming up. And I thought that I was going to ask someone to prom. Yeah. It did not go well, so just let me get through this story. I already had debated telling you guys a story because as I was telling it and practicing, I was getting embarrassed by myself. So I was like, oh, this is really embarrassing. I'm going to tell this in front of everyone. So my junior year of high school, it was the first year that I could go to prom without someone having to ask me. I could just go on my own. And so I was like, there's this guy that I've had a crush on, so I'm going to ask him to prom. So I had this whole thing planned out. I was going to pull him out of class because I was in yearbook, and a lot of times, like for yearbook, we would like pull people out of class to get interviews or take pictures for like the spreads in the yearbook. So I was like, okay, I had this whole plan. My friends are like, oh yeah, you should do this. Like they're all hyping me up, and I'm like, okay, this is gonna work. Like this is gonna happen. And it was really weird because obviously, like then guys ask girls. Like girls didn't ask guys to prom. Like that's not normal. And so I was like, okay, I have this whole plan. And then I made this I'm going to show you guys. It's going to be on the back wall. I made this little clothespin. This is not mine. I didn't make this. This is just like the inspo because back in the 1900s or whatever, I didn't have a smartphone in high school, so I don't have a picture of what I actually made. So this is essentially the inspo, though. I just found this on the internet. It did not say I love you. It said prom in it. So imagine this, but imagine that says prom ? So I made that. So I pulled him out of class. I started asking him all these questions about prom. So I was like, oh, we're doing a spread over prom. I'm going to ask you all these prom questions. And so I asked him this question, and we get to the end, and I don't remember how I did this, because honestly, toward the end of this, I try to block out of my brain, because it was just so bad. I give him this little pen, and he opens it, and it says prom, and he's like, he makes face, and so in my head, I'm like, okay, he's gonna say yes, like this worked, like I'm so glad I did this, and then he's like, yeah, I'm going to prom with someone else already. I don't even remember what happened. I think I was just like, okay, thanks, and I just like grabbed it, and I just walked off. I just left. I was like, this is so awkward. This is embarrassing. And you're probably like, why are you telling this story? Well, as we're looking at the book of Ruth in chapter 3 today, Ruth is really bold in what she does in these verses. So we are going to look at Ruth chapter 3. If you want to turn there in your Bible, I'm going to also turn there in my Bible. So this chapter is pretty bold. It's probably one of the boldest moves in the Bible, and it could have gone very wrong. So let's read and let's look at what's happening. So verse 1. It's also going to be on the screen if you don't have your Bible. One day Ruth's mother-in-law Naomi said to her, "My daughter, I must find a home for you where you will be well provided for. Now Boaz, with whose women you have worked, is a relative of ours. Tonight he will be winnowing barley on the threshing floor. Wash, put on perfume, and get dressed in your best clothes. Then go down to the threshing floor, but don't let him know you are there until he has finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, note the place where he is lying. Then go and uncover his feet and lie down. He will tell you what to do. I will do whatever you say," Ruth answered. So let's pause right there. So the threshing floor. I had to look this up because I still didn't fully understand what the threshing floor is. It's basically where they would separate grain. So they would separate the seed from the shell. And a lot of times it turned into a place where workers would sleep overnight to protect and watch over the grain. So that's essentially, they said, when I was looking it up, it said that it's sometimes just on a hill, it's just where a bunch of grain is, essentially. So that's where she's telling her to go. So Naomi gives Ruth a plan that sounds kind of questionable at first, like, okay, especially if you kind of know, we'll jump into that more in a little bit, but if you know more about like the culture of the times, this is kind of like, okay, like what are we asking Ruth to do? But Ruth's response is, I will do whatever you say. The first thing I want you to write down is boldness isn't random courage, it's rooted in trust. So boldness isn't always, sometimes we might think it's being loud, being reckless, but it's really not any of those things. It's trusting God enough to obey him fully. And for you, that might look like inviting someone to church. Maybe that's choosing not to follow the crowd. Maybe you hang out with some people that don't always make their best choices. It's also living differently when it costs you something. You don't step out boldly unless you actually believe God is going to meet you there. Let's continue to read in Ruth chapter 3, verse 6. So she went down to the threshing floor and did everything her mother-in-law told her to do. When Boaz had finished eating and drinking and was in good spirits, he went over to lie down at the far end of the grain pile. Ruth approached quietly, uncovered his feet, and lay down. In the middle of the night, something startled the man. He turned, and there was a woman lying at his feet. "Who are you?" he asked. "I am your servant Ruth," she said. "Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are a guardian redeemer of our family." Okay, so the guardian redeemer, I think we might have talked about this last week, but essentially this is like someone in this culture, women couldn't really do anything apart from having a husband. Their husband kind of provided and did everything for their family. So if their husband died, then a close relative would essentially step in and restore what was lost. So maybe that's buying some land, maybe that's carrying on the family name, whatever that looks like. She's essentially saying, will you cover me and restore what is broken? Because if we go back to Ruth chapter 1, we know that her husband has died and her father-in-law as well. So this is really bold for the time. Ruth is basically asking him, will you redeem me? This could have gone really wrong, kind of like the story I told you at the beginning of this. She could have been rejected. She could have been embarrassed. There could have been a misunderstanding. There could have been damage to her reputation. All these things could have gone wrong. But bold obedience always involves risk. Whether that's sharing your faith, that's a risk. Whether that's standing for the truth or what's right, that's a risk. Being different, sometimes doing something opposite of the rest of the crowd, that is a risk. So I want to clarify that in this passage, Ruth, she's not being reckless or she's not being inappropriate. She's acting with courage and integrity within her culture. So this was a very male-dominated society. Women's security, again, their future, their identity, it was all tied to family and marriage. So she's also, we've learned, a Moabite, which was essentially someone with no status. She was an outsider. So this would have also just made her already kind of like, this is really bold for her to be going to someone as like an outsider. But she does it in a respectful way, asking to cover me, protect me, step into a role God has designed for you, because we know that this was set in place so that women could be taken care of, the guardian redeemer. Let's keep reading verses 10 and 11. "The Lord bless you, my daughter," he replied. "This kindness is greater than that which you showed earlier. You have not run after the younger men, whether rich or poor, and now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you all you ask. All the people of my town know that you are a woman of noble character." So, yay, Ruth doesn't get rejected like I did. Boaz doesn't reject her. He honors her. And he literally says her boldness shows her character. So, next thing I want you to write down, when you live boldly for God, people notice. Your faith is not as invisible as you might think it is. So how you are bold in your faith can influence your friends, your school, your family, whatever that looks like. I think sometimes we think, oh, I can't really make a difference. I can't, just because I'm reading my Bible, like no one's noticing that. But a lot more people are noticing your bold faith than you think. Bold faith doesn't just change your story, it impacts everyone that's watching. Okay, let's finish this chapter. Verse 12. Although it is true that I am a guardian redeemer of our family, there is another who is more closely related than I. Stay there for the night, and in the morning, if he wants to do his duty as your guardian redeemer, good, let him redeem you. But if he is not willing, as surely as the Lord lives, I will do it. Lie here until morning. So she lay at his feet until morning, but got up before anyone could be recognized, and he said, no one must know that a woman came to the threshing floor. He also said, bring me the shawl you are wearing and hold it out. When she did so, he poured into it 6 measures of barley and placed the bundle on her. Then he went back to town. When Ruth came to her mother-in-law, Naomi asked, How did it go, my daughter? Then she told her everything Boaz had done for her and added, he gave me these 6 measures of barley, saying, don't go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed. Then Naomi said, wait, my daughter, until you find out what happens, for the man will not rest until the matter is settled today. Okay, so this part is Boaz is saying, yes, I will do it, but there's another redeemer first. So there's someone else that technically would be first in line before him. So even though Ruth went and she made this really bold step, she still has to wait. And sometimes that can be really hard because just because we're bold, that doesn't override God's timing. You can step out in faith and still not see immediate results. I was talking about this week about how I didn't really, when I first started in ministry or even just talking in front of people, I didn't like doing those things. And a lot of the times I feel like I was still not doing great at them. And I was like, okay, I'm being bold, God. I'm doing what you've asked me. And yet I still am not seeing the fruit, or I'm not seeing these immediate results. And I think we live in a society where we want instant gratification. We have fast food. We have Amazon Prime delivery that gets delivered the same day. All these things. And when we're obedient, that doesn't necessarily mean that we get exactly what we want right away. Something else we were talking about this week is sometimes we will say, like, okay, God, like, I trust you. I'm going to let you do these things. And then you're still kind of like, yeah, but God, like, if you did it this way, if you did it, like, this way that I'm trying to tell you, then it might just be, like, it might work out. And I want you guys to really think about this next point that I'm going to have you write down. Because when I was preparing this message, this was hitting home for me of like, oh, yeah, I needed to hear this too. Boldness is taking the step. Trust is letting God handle the outcome. Boldness is taking the step. Trust is letting God handle the outcome. So again, sometimes we want to ask God for things, or we pray for these things, or we step out in boldness and we're like, okay, God, I'm still not seeing this. Like, if you would just do it this way. But that's what trust is. We're letting him handle the outcome. It's not what our outcome will look like. So when we look at the book of Ruth, chapter 3, something that also just stood out to me is Boaz in this. I feel like he's a picture of Jesus. Ruth boldly approached Boaz for redemption. And we boldly approach Jesus for our salvation. Because of Jesus, we don't have to approach God in fear. This is something when I was preparing, I was like, how great is it that we get to go to the feet of Jesus? We have a Redeemer. And like, we don't have to fear rejection. We don't have to fear him saying, oh, actually, no, like this isn't going to happen. He's there with open arms. He's not waiting with, oh, well, you have to do all these things first. He's already there. He's going to redeem us. Ruth approached a Redeemer in hope. So she went to Boaz for hope. But we get to approach a Redeemer with certainty, knowing that he's there for us. And I want to take a minute right now, because we're talking about being bold. And Boaz didn't have to say yes to Ruth. He chose to. And in the same way, Jesus chose to step in and become our Redeemer. Because sin left us empty, it left us separated from God, we couldn't fix it on our own. So Jesus stepped in and he paid the price that we couldn't pay. He restored what was broken. And maybe someone invited you today because we're having popsicles after service. I thought this was funny because a couple weeks ago, one of my girls was talking about how her sister invited her because we were having popsicles. And she serves now. She comes faithfully every week, and she's really involved at church, and it's completely changed it for her. So maybe you got invited tonight. Maybe one of your friends was like, hey, we're having popsicles. You should come to youth tonight. And maybe you've been around church, you know who God is, but you've never personally said, Jesus, I need you to redeem my life. I want to give you guys the opportunity, if that's you, if that's speaking to you, to make that commitment to give Jesus your life today. So, we're talking about being bold. So if that is speaking to you, I want you to just start standing up. If you feel like, hey, I need to give Jesus my life today. I want him to redeem me. If that's you, you can stand up. If it's no one, that's also okay. Because we all need a redeemer, right?